Good day everyone, and also to our grade 9 learners. For today, we are going to discuss the effects of changing the values of a, h, and k in the graphs of quadratic functions. Let us discuss first the graph of our parent function y equals x squared. This is how the graph of our parent function looks like. Notice that the graph here opens upward because the value of a is greater than 0. The vertex is at 0, 0. The axis of symmetry is equal to x equals 0. The domain is the set of all real numbers, and the range would be y is greater than or equal to 0. How about the graph of y equals negative x squared? Notice that the graph now opens downward because the value of a here is negative. The vertex is still at 0, 0. The axis of symmetry is x equals 0. The domain is the set of all real numbers, while the range is y is less than or equal to 0. What do you notice? This is simply the reflection of our parent function y equals x squared. The first one, our parent function, opens upward, and its reflection, since the value of a is negative, will simply opens downward. Now let us discuss the effects of changing the value of a in the graph of our quadratic function in vertex form y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. In the graph of f of x equals ax squared, if a is greater than 0, then the graph will opens upward. But if a is less than 0, the graph will opens downward. Now, how about the shape of the graph? If the absolute value of a is greater than 1, the graph will be narrower compared to our parent function. Ibig sabihin, mas makitid. Now, if the absolute value of a is less than 1, the graph now is wider compared to our parent function. Ibig sabihin, mas malapad. That means the value of a in the quadratic function can affect the direction and opening of the graph. It may opens upward or downward. It can also affect the shape of the graph. Maari siyang maging narrower o kaya naman ay wider. Now let us have an example. Let us compare this to the graph of our parent function y equals x squared. In our first example, y equals 2x squared, the value of a is 2, and 2 is greater than 0. So the graph will opens upward. Ano ba ang absolute value of 2? The answer is 2, and 2 is greater than 1. Ibig sabihin, ang graph natin is narrower compared to our parent function. So this is how the graph of y equals 2x squared looks like. Notice that the graph opens upward, but it is narrower, mas makitid compared to our parent function y equals x squared. Let's have another example. Y equals negative 2x squared. Ano ang value ng a natin? It is negative 2, and negative 2 is less than 0. Therefore, the graph will opens downward. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2, and 2 is still greater than 1. Ibig sabihin, ang graph natin will still be narrower compared to our parent function. So notice that this y equals negative 2x squared is simply the reflection of y equals 2x squared. Let us have another example. This time, Let us have y equals 1/2 x squared. Notice na ang value ng a natin is greater than 0 because 1/2 is greater than 0. That means ang graph natin will still opens upward. But the absolute value of 1/2 is 1/2. It is less than 1. Kaya naman ang graph natin will be wider compared to our parent function. So ano kaya ang itsura ng graph ni y equals 1/2 x squared? Itong naka-violet. So notice na mas malapad siya. It is wider compared to our parent function y equals x squared. How about y equals negative 1/3 x squared? Since ang value ni a natin is negative, that means our graph will opens downward. Pero, ano ba ang absolute value ni negative 1/3? The answer is 1/3. And 1/3 is still less than 1. Mas mababa kaysa 1. Kaya naman, ang graph natin will still be wider compared to our parent function. So, eto namang blue, ang graph ni y equals negative 1/3 x squared. Kung mapapansin natin, it opens downward at mas malapad siya. It is wider compared to our parent function. Now, let us identify the effects of changing the value of k in the graph of our quadratic function. The graph of the quadratic function x squared plus k is the graph of our parent function translated vertically. A vertical translation of a parabola is a shift of the parabola up or down with no change in the shape of the parabola. If k is greater than 0, ibig sabihin positive, the graph of the parent function will be translated k units upward. But if the value of k is less than 0, meaning negative, the graph of our parent function is translated k units downward. Let us have an example. And let us compare this again to the graph of our parent function y equals x squared. In the first example, y equals x squared plus 2, notice that the value of k is greater than 0. That means we have to move 2 units upward. So kung ito ang ating parent function, imumove lang natin ito 2 units pataas. 1, 2. And therefore, we now have the graph of y equals x squared plus 2. How about if I have here y equals x squared minus 2? Ang value ni k ay negative 2, and that is less than 0. That means, imomove lang natin si parent function 2 units downward. So kung ito ang ating parent function, move natin siya 2 units, 1, 2. We now have the graph of y equals x squared minus 2. Kanina, meron tayong graph na y equals negative 2x squared. Paano naman kung gagawin natin siyang y equals negative 2x squared minus 2? Notice na ang value ng k natin dito ay negative. Ibig sabihin, it will be translated 2 units downward. So kung ito si y equals negative 2x squared, ibababa natin ito 2 units downward, 1, 2. This is now the graph of y equals negative 2x squared minus 2. Now, let us discuss the effects of changing the value of h in the graph of our quadratic function. The graph of the quadratic function f of x equals the quantity x minus h squared is the graph of our parent function translated horizontally. A horizontal translation of a parabola is the shift of the parabola left or right with no change in the shape of the parabola. That means if the value of h is greater than 0, then the parent function will be translated h units to the right. But if the value of h is less than 0, then the parent function will be translated h units to the left. Ibig sabihin, kung ito ay x minus 5, the value of h is 5. So we move 5 units to the right. But if this is x plus 5, the value of h is negative. That means we have to move 5 units to the left. Let us have an example. And again, let us compare this to the graph of our parent function y equals x squared. If I have here y equals the quantity x minus 3 squared, the value of h here is 3. And 3 is greater than 0. That means we have to move the graph 3 units to the right. So if this is our function, we move it 3 units to the right, 1, 2, and 3. And now, we have the graph of y equals the quantity x minus 3 squared. How about if I have here y equals the quantity x plus 3 squared? The value of h here is negative 3. That means it is less than 0 and we have to move 3 units to the left. So if this is our parent function, we move 3 units to the left. 1, 2, 3. And this time, we now have the graph of y equals the quantity x plus 3 squared. Notice that the graphs have the same shape and all opens upward. They have their vertices on the x-axis. What if this is x minus 5? If this is now x minus 5, this time we move 5 units to the right. But if this is x plus 5, the value of h is negative, then we move 5 units to the left. So ngayon, alamin naman natin ano ang magiging epekto ng values ni A, ni H at ni K sa graph ng quadratic function. If I have here y equals 2 times the quantity x minus 3 squared plus 2, ang value ni A natin ay 2. Ang value ni H ay 3 at si K ay equal kay 2. So again, gamitin natin si parent function y equals x squared. Since a is greater than 0, that is 2, the graph will opens upward. But this time, the absolute value of a is 2, and it is greater than 1. Ibig sabihin, ang graph natin will be narrower compared to our parent function. So kung ito si parent function, anong mangyayari sa graph? Ayun, kikitid yung ating graph. So this is now the graph when a is equal to 2. But the value of k here is equal to 2. It is greater than 0. Ibig sabihin, we have to move the graph 2 units upward. So etong makitid na ito will be moved 2 units upward. 1, 2. So eto na ngayon ang graph natin. But again, meron pa tayong value ni h, and h here equals 3. So ano nga ba lang mangyayari kapag ang value ay greater than 0? You have to move 3 units to the right. So from this point, i-move natin siya 3 units to the right. 1, 2, 3. So that means this is now the graph of y equals 2 times the quantity x minus 3 squared plus 2. Notice that it is narrower compared to the graph of our parent function. We move 2 units upward and 3 units to the right. Now let us have another example. Y equals negative 1/2 times the quantity x plus 3 squared plus 4. Alamin natin ang values ni A, H, and K. A is negative 1/2, h is negative 3, and k equals 4. Let us compare this to the graph of our parent function y equals x squared. Notice na ang value ni a natin ay less than 0. Therefore, ang graph natin will opens downward. Ano ba ang absolute value ni negative 1 half? The answer is 1 half. And 1 half is less than 1. Mas mababa kay 1. Kaya kung mapapansin natin, ang graph natin ngayon is wider. Mas malapad. Next, ang value ni k natin ay 4. And 4 is greater than 0. That means, ang graph natin ay iaangat natin ng 4 na units. So, we have to move 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 units upward. But, the value of h here is negative. So, kung ang value ng h ay negative, it's less than 0, so we have to move 3 units to the left. So, from this point, move tayo ng 3 units. 1, 2, 3. So, we now have the graph of y equals negative 1 half times the quantity x plus 3 squared plus 4. So again, let us review the effects of the values of a, h, and k in the graph of our quadratic function in vertex form. Tandaan, the value of a will indicate a reflection in the x-axis, meaning it may opens upward or downward. And it will also determine if the graph will be narrower or wider. Ang value naman ni h ang magsasabi sa atin if we are going to move to the right or to the left. And the value of k will indicate if we are going to move up or down. I hope you learned something today. Thank you for watching.